Hello everyone, this is Ashburn. Today we're looking at a match between White Ra and F91. It's a very good showcase for us to study Zerglings versus Tier 1 Toss. So over here we have a very simple configuration of 4 links versus 1 zealot. Do notice that the resource count is exactly the same, 100 minerals and 2 supply for both. Is this number still applicable at larger army configuration, a larger ratio? So here we have 10 zealots versus 40 links. If we are going to just do an auto attack, it really depends on the AI. In this particular case, this rule is still applicable because for this map scenario, the Zergling is able to manage quite a good surround. So if the ratio of 4 to 1 works for Zerg player, what can a Protoss player do? So in this case, we are looking at a ratio of 8 to 32. So what the Protoss player can do is simply by increasing the zealots by 1. So that's one thing you can do. The other thing is substitute the 8 zealot instead of 8 zealots. Get 1 sentry and throw out some force field. So in this case, the purpose of the force field is to minimize the surround of the Zergling on the zealots. Okay, moving on, we are testing the Stalker versus 4 Zergling. The first test we are testing without any micro. You can see the Zergling wind. In the second test, I'm going to just use 3 links. So in fact, one thing you're going to notice is against Stalker, even if you were to use 3 links, you still beat the Stalker. So the reason why I'm going with the ratio 4 to 1 is for larger armies. So in the case whereby the Zerg player has to engage 4 sentry, they can cluster quite effectively this way. So in order to ensure that you win, it's better for you to have a 4 to 1 ratio. Okay, so what happens if you are the Toss player? So as opposed to increasing the number of stalkers, we bring along a sentry. Now in this case, the best way to force field is to totally prevent the Zerglings from even attacking the stalkers, because stalkers, unlike zealots, obviously can shoot range. They can shoot across the force field. Now in this example, if you were to misplace your force field and allow the Zerglings to go in even by a small number, the Zerglings can basically just tear out your army. So finally, we are looking at the sentry. There's nothing much to talk about here because sentry is pretty much like the stalker because they are range unit. It only takes 2 Zergling to take out your sentry, and the ratio is 2 to 1, so it's applicable even in a slightly larger army size. And again, this is showing the sentry without any micro. Sentry by itself is one of the weakest unit you have. If you have sentry, you definitely need to use its abilities. Over here we are looking at the scenario whereby the sentry is trying to protect itself from the Zerglings and also activating the Guardian Shield. As you can see, the sentry is able to take care of itself if it is allowed to use the special abilities. Okay, so this is the basic rule that I've established, 4 to 1, maybe you can even put 3 to 1 and 2 to 1. Yeah, in fact, why don't we go ahead and change this to 3 to 1. Yep, so 4 to 1, 3 to 1, 2 to 1. Very nice ratio to remember. So moving on, let's go into the replay. We see White Ra is breaking into the natural of F91. So this is the point whereby the battle begins. White Ra pushes his main army into the natural with about 1 more coming in. Later we're going to see that the Zerg player splits his army and do a flanking attack, but bulk of the army basically comes down over here. So this is the battle. Let's see how it turns out. So one thing I like to note is the Queen fires off about 3 shots before it's being pushed away by the force field. but most of the Zerglings is able to get in just now and take out tons of units, most of the sentries. Um, I didn't take into account the drones in my example because they basically just came over for a while, maybe inflict 20 points of damage and went back. And you can see, so this is a lot of links. So White Ra lost the first battle, and immediately we're moving to the second battle. Okay, what happens over here is we have all these units from White Ra. He's waiting for the cooldown for all his warp gates to send in the reinforcement. He attacked before White Ra is able to summon in all this, and as a result is able to completely wipe out this army. So and White Ra leaves the game. Okay, so why don't we go back to battle number 1 again. So this is a scenario for battle number 1. And in this case, I'm going to try some Sentry Micro. I'm throwing up a couple of Force Field and a Guardian Shield. And one thing that puzzles me is with this scenario, the Protoss player beats the Lynx. So why don't we try this again? So I'm giving energy to the Sentry, and again, I'm trying out with the Force Field, but without the Guardian Shield. And again, we see that the Protoss wins this battle quite easily and quite convincingly. So where could it be wrong? So why don't we try this again? Okay, so this is the third time I'm trying this. I'm trying this without any micro at all. The sentries are not using any of its abilities. So let's see what happens. Okay, so in this case, the Zerg player is able to beat the Protoss player. So I guess the difference is in the force field. So let's say I were to place a couple of force field, but the only difference is I allow the Zerglings to come in and form a line in front of the sentry. The sentry and stalker. So in this case, you can see, even though I have crewed out a couple of force field, the Protoss still end up losing. In battle number 2, it's a bit more complicated. About 38 of the links, 8 to 10 of them are in red life. So in the simulator later, I'm going to use only 30 links. For the Protoss army, we begin with about 4 Protoss, but we are adding 4 more halfway through the battle. So let's move on to the simulator. I'm trying to start by throwing off one force field, and the force field was quite badly placed. My reinforcement comes in, but Zergling just chew my army up. Okay, so what I'm trying to do now is to see if I'm able to get a better outcome. This is the reinforcement army that I'm putting to one side, and I'm moving the main army in front. I will only have enough energy to throw off one force field. So what I'm doing here is to minimize the amount of Zerglings around, and I'm sending my reinforcement army here that appears after 5 seconds. And as you can see, maybe in the real game situation, you may not win because the Zerg player can simply run the Zergling around and surround you. With only one force field is really very hard, but the good thing is we are able to see at least 2 outcomes over here. Okay, so this is game 3. I hope you like the really simple ratio that I threw out for you, and I'll see you next time.